Just in time.
Good evening. Good evening, Joe. I did not see him charge. Where's the body? He's close. Tonight we have on the planning commission. We have Shelley Nazer, Mr. Hankey. My name is Brian Marvel. I'm filling in for the chairman tonight. Bob Washburn and Joe Chambers. We've got a quorum. We're gonna have a regular meeting tonight. We've got the agenda. We've got a lot of items online tonight. I'd like to have asked Mr. Hankey to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to start this evening. I'm going to ask again, is Mike Fortune online? Mike Fortune's not online. So there's 5 of us on the commission tonight. We expect Mr. Fortune as a 6th member to come in sometime online. Okay. So Michael is the only one absent tonight. Minutes. The approval of the minutes for March 7th, our last meeting. Commission members, do you have any changes or concerns about content or the details?
I had 2 small things that I want to tie about this show. Incorrectly.
Okay. No bearing on our
No.
knowledge. Okay. We'll continue on. Do you want a motion to approve or? You're right, we do. Thank you, Joe. We have a motion to approve the minutes. I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we've got Mr. Chambers has made a motion that we approve the minutes for March 27th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. We've got a second by Bob Washburn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're going to move on. And public comments. Before we start the public hearing tonight that has been posted, I'd like to know if there's anybody in the audience who'd like to make public comments? Or do we have anybody, Tyler online that sent any comments?
No, I checked that before I came in here, there are no emails.
Thank you, Tyler. From the audience, public comments. Okay. We'll go ahead and move to public hearing. We have one public hearing tonight. It's regarding the Champlin LLC partial rezone. Before we start the public hearing, we have asked Scarlett Bankhead to give us a synopsis of the rezone itself and a brief history so that we can all be on the same page. Scarlett?
Okay, the property that we're talking about tonight is in the general area of 500 South and 600 West, and it extends down to Highway 165 and goes back to the north between 300 South, or almost to 300 South, not quite. It is west of the current Ballard Springs 55 plus development. And this property is currently zoned Commercial Highway District, which is a zone designed to encourage sales tax producing businesses. We do allow incidental uses in that district, but they have to be supportive to sales tax producing businesses, and sales tax producing businesses need to consume about 85% of the square footage when it comes right down to it. The applicant has a current R16, which is single family detached homes on 6,000 minimum square foot lots development. And they would like to extend that development a little bit to the west. So the current development is a 39 lot PUD development on 10 acres with detached single family homes. The developer advertises 7 home plans ranging from 1,428 square feet to 1,994 square feet. I would assume they're going to continue with plans similar to that, since this is an extension of that development, if the rezone is granted, but Rick Champlin, the applicant, is here, and so you could ask him that. The purpose tonight is to get the public's input on how they feel about changing the zoning for that portion, which would be approximately, I know I put that in here somewhere. I can't remember, 5 acres, I think, maybe a little bit more. 5.71. It's the applicant's request is to rezone approximately 5.71 acres in the southeast corner of the parcel, even though the developer provided development drawings for the purpose of showing infrastructure and a possible layout. No development plans are being considered for approval as part of the development, as part of the rezone request. Any development plans will be reviewed under a future separate application, and so these plans would be subject to change. When we put together a summary.
Stop you right there.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure everybody understands. So all we're considering is a rezone. And once it's rezoned, whatever is allowed in that rezone would be permissible to go forward.
Correct, correct.
I just-
The plans, when we ask for a rezone application, we ask the applicant to let us know how they think they will get utilities to it. And sometimes it's just easier for them to show us their development plan. And we do, that is, our ordinance does say if they choose to, they can provide that to the planning commission. And the developer chose to do it that way. But you are right, Mr. Chambers, there is no, we are talking about a rezone. We are not talking development plans tonight. So, they're just more of a FYI, this is how it could maybe be developed, but not this is how it definitely will.
Thank you.
We also consider, the general plan, which talks about zoning. We have a map in our general plan that talks about future rezoning, or that shows future rezoning of existing districts and annex areas. And that map shows this property as commercial highway, and it does not show a change for a future rezone. So the general plan is a guideline, it is not ordinance. So you can, if the city council chooses, they can change the zone to something other than what the general plan says. I think that's one other point that I would like to make tonight. The public hearing, the planning commission is the one that entertains the public hearing and the public comments. And then after the planning commission listens to the public comments, the planning commission can discuss, and then they can make a recommendation to city council. The planning commission may recommend to deny, they may recommend to approve, whichever they do. The city council is under no obligation to agree with that, recommendation. So the planning commission may consider everything and recommend that the rezone should be denied. For whatever reasons, the planning commission may recommend the rezone should be denied. When it goes to city council, the city council can again evaluate, and if the city council chooses, they could choose to approve it, even though the planning commission recommended denying. Generally, our city council respects, well, I think all city councils, whether they agree or disagree, sometimes they have information or they have a vision that we don't always, the planning commission doesn't always, have. And so I think they always respect a decision or a recommendation from the planning commission, but they are not obligated to follow it. So I think that's important for people to understand, because sometimes they get frustrated if the planning or the city council does something a little bit contrary to what the planning commission suggests. Infrastructure, regardless of what the zone is, the infrastructure will still have to be put in, pretty much that is required, whether it's housing or whether it's commercial. 500 South is still going to need to go in at some point in time, from the existing west end of 500 South to State Road 165. As development goes, water lines, sewer lines, and facilities, stormwater lines and facilities, fiber lines and facilities, secondary water, that will all have to be addressed as development goes, whether it's single family or whether it's commercial. So those two things are, are really not dependent on the rezone. They're gonna have to be addressed either way. Sensitive areas also have to be addressed regardless of the zoning. And sensitive areas include, but not limited to, open water bodies, FEMA designated floodplain, potential high groundwater, liquefaction potential, and steep slopes. That doesn't mean that they actually exist there, but there is the potential, and the developer would need to address that in a geotech report with whichever type of development went on there. So really what you're looking at tonight is you're going to weigh the pros and cons of keeping the zone commercial highway district. And I misstated, it's actually 88% needs to be sales tax producing. And then 12% can be incidental, like financial institution or offices, something like that. So you're going to consider whether you feel it's more important for this property to remain commercial highway, or whether you feel like changing a portion of it to residential with minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. That is kind of one of the things that the state moderate income housing people look at is 6,000 square foot lots and less, to help encourage homes in that price range. However, I think most of these homes, maybe the smallest one will meet the moderate income housing level, maybe, but most of these homes will probably not, even though the size may be what is suitable for moderate income housing. The actual cost may be will probably be more than the moderate income housing. So I don't think that should be a driving factor in your mind. So.
Thank you very much.
I do have, when you open the public hearing, I did have a resident that's, Jason Holmes did send me a text and ask me if I would share that when you're ready for that.
Would you go ahead and do that now, please?
You want to open the public hearing and then I can do that?
Okay, sure. Stand, don't move. We're gonna open the public hearing. Tonight, Scarlett has given the commission, the explanation of how the city staff sees the rezone request. And so as we open this public hearing, we're gonna go ahead and hear from a text message from a Jason Holmes.
Mm-hmm. Jason Holmes. He actually, I think, was here, maybe he was at the city council a couple of weeks ago. He was not at your previous meeting. He said, I won't be able to attend tonight's public hearing due to a work conflict. If I recall correctly, the last time the developer attempted to rezone the parcel from highway commercial to another use, the planning commission unanimously agreed against the rezone request because because of the limited commercial zone left in the city boundaries. That's not exactly how that happened. The last request, the developer actually was talking about mixed use and decided during the meeting that he didn't want to move forward with mixed use at that time, but so it remained commercial. However, then he says, I'm curious to know if the current commission stance has changed. While I support well-designed communities like Ballard Springs, I also think it's wise for the city to look at all angles when downzoning a parcel from commercial use. This request appears to be reasonable, but perhaps the north boundary line could match the existing north line of Ballard Springs, thus preserving additional commercial space. I actually thought it did, but maybe I looked at the map wrong.
Okay,
I know the south boundary line went further, but I thought the north was the same. So anyway,
thank you.
that's from
Jason Holmes,
Jesse.
text message.
Yep.
Okay, tonight I've got, on the sign-in sheet, I've got, Dennis Anderson is requested to. Dennis, if you could come up and state your name and, tell us where you're from, and your comments. Just so you know, we've got somewhere between 1 and 2 minutes, and we have up to an hour tonight.
I don't have a lot of breath, I'll make it short. Dennis Anderson, currently a resident of Hiram, Utah. Momentarily to be a resident of Providence in that Ballard Springs development. So I thought that I'd make comments after I learned a bit more about the presentation. But in general, I'd like to say I support the idea of expanding the kind of neighborhood that there is now. It was very difficult for me to find a piece of property over the years that was really geared for the plus 55 community. And I think now becoming a resident there, I think it would certainly, I appreciate having a little bit more buffer from the commercial zone. Everybody needs it. I understand. I spent 10 years in planning and zoning at Hiram City, also 10 years on Board of Adjustments. So you have to balance those things. In any event, I just wanted to express support for going down this pathway with single family and particularly in this plus 55 style community.
Okay,
That's what I had to say.
thank you, Dennis.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, others in the audience would like to comment? Okay. 1, 2, 3, gone. We're gonna go ahead and continue on with the agenda for our meeting today. We're gonna close the public hearing. If I can get to the right page. Okay, we're gonna close the public hearing and, if you've got an agenda there, Andy, mind.
That's like,
Okay, we're going to close the public hearing on the Champlin LLC partial rezone public hearing. And then we're gonna go ahead and go to legislative action, which is going to also concern the Champlin LLC partial rezone. We've had Scarlett give us an explanation about how the city staff sees the rezone. And so we are here to discuss amongst the commission members. And we also had a study item last time we met 2 weeks ago on this same rezone. So yeah, is it Rick or is Rick your dad? You're Rick.
I'm Rick. Yeah.
Rick, would you like to come up, make any comments
Yeah.
as the developer? representing Champlin LLC, Mr. Rick Champlin.
Yeah, so I'm Rick Champlin. So we did discuss this 2 weeks ago. Some of the things that I wanted to kind of bring up related to the rezoning that kind of got discussed after comments last week is the fact that it is zoned highway commercial, so 88% needs to be tax generating. And when you look at other tax generating businesses in Providence and then go further into Logan, so Panda Express, the Quick Quack, those things, all those parcels that hold those businesses are about 220 feet deep. We're leaving at least that. We go up to about 250 feet in some spots, so we have ample space for those style of businesses. When you go farther north into Logan, just at that Riverwoods, those parcels are actually, or where the commercial buildings sit on the front, those restaurants are actually only about 120 to 150 feet deep, so they're much smaller. So there's a range of capabilities there as far as having enough space for the stuff that you see out in front of Macy's. And then you really, when you look at those other parcels, you don't see more businesses behind them. They're usually only like to be out on the road. So I think we have enough space there to bring in those kind of businesses out on the road. It kind of clones what was approved recently across the street. So you have the commercial highway right on the highway, and then you have the mixture of multifamily high as well as the general commercial. So yeah, we think this would be a good use for that space, leaving ample space for tax generating commercial businesses to be out on the highway with good visibility and access.
What was it? Where is the parcel again that you mentioned about previous rezone? Is that across the highway?
Across the highway, yeah. So where Blackstone is, and again, speaking towards the general plan of this being commercial highway, that's what across the highway was before too. The general plan showed that as all commercial highway, and previously, or it's since then be rezoned to have commercial highway in the front and then the multifamily and the general commercial behind it. So I think our application's kind of in line with what's been done previously in relation to the general plan.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Champlin?
Yeah, I have a question. So we talk about buffer zone often, and what you're doing here is extending, or the plan is to extend what you currently have. What do you anticipate as a buffer zone? Will you be coming back to ask for another rezone for something in between the homes?
No, I think the buffer zone would have been this being a medium density housing, which was kind of what we brought forward in that mixed use, but it was spoken against so much because of the recent proposition that got voted against related to Visionaries project that we decided not to do that. So I think if we were really gonna go for a true buffer that's kind of in between the single family and the commercial, it would be to do a more of a high density, but because the residents came out and spoke against having any density there, we decided that extending the single family would be another good use. And
So
we'll have a fence along there and make sure it's
there really
still
is no
private. And
buffer between the
Yeah.
commercial and the single family.
no,
Okay.
No, but we can definitely, when it comes to designing the commercial highway district, if you look at the existing parcels, the buildings are out on the road, and then there's kind of a shared access that goes along the east side of them. So that's something that we could do to have kind of a landscaped and access area in between the commercial and the residential, so that the buildings aren't just right up against that property. We could definitely do some design things on the commercial side to make sure there's more space there.
Any other questions for?
I've got a couple questions. The space that you're taking up here is about 50% of that lot. So, sort of, I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
look
you
at
have, that parcel extends all the way to 300 south.
Right.
So I mean, it's kind of 50% of the
Of the amount.
southern portion of it where you, by the
So,
small
so
Ballard
you're taking up
Springs.
about 50% with your buildings.
Mhm.
This road that abruptly ends there is not going to end there, right?
500 south?
Yeah.
No,
Does it flow through that commercial area and take up more space?
yeah, so this was kind of discussed with the property owners on the west side of the highway. They have their development there and they wanted the access to kind of swing out farther to the north. Originally, when we came in with this first phase of the development, the road was just gonna come directly along the side of the Ballard Springs. But after talking to the property owners on the west and kind of figuring out where access points should be with UDOT, we moved it farther to the north. So I think what we have there, that road will continue to swing out and then straighten into the highway. So we'll actually have a commercial parcel on the south side and the north side, or commercial plots of that road. So we'll have something on both sides of that corner based on where that road got moved to.
Okay, I've got a question for Scarlett, I think. But, the 88% of, the use of the commercial property would have been calculated on the total lot. Is that correct? On the total property there? Now, if we take out a chunk of this, and make it residential, are we going to recalculate that 88% against the remaining?
Yep.
So we've just moved the goal line, right? As far as calculating the amount of land that should be used for sales tax generating activities.
Yes, you.
So the 88%.
reduced the amount of property that would potentially be used for sales tax generating.
Okay, and does the road also cut into that?
The road, the percentages are based on the, business and the associated uses with that, with the business. So like if there was a bank, the bank would be, if you're figuring the incidental use for a bank and they had a drive-through, it would be the bank and the drive-through. So you would calculate as incidental. If it was a restaurant, then you would calculate that size of the building, and if they had outdoor seating, you'd calculate that. So it just depends on what sales tax comes in there, how big, how much, it will be based on the percentage, 88% of the sales tax generating businesses, not 88% of the total ground.
Okay. Another question, I believe for you is, you mentioned that Logan has 150 to 200 feet of space for their businesses.
That's in front of the hotel.
That's
Right.
That was just one particular one
Right, so-
for the hotel.
But my question is, does that include parking?
Mhm.
So that kind of.
Yeah, and the stuff in front of Macy's that's 220 includes parking as well, and we have up to 250 feet on ours, so we have more than enough room for building and parking.
Okay,
Ryan, could you pull up the parcel map for us? I think that's an important piece to look at. The zoning layer.
Me?
Water.
Yeah, but I just have to put it in my hand there. There's no problem.
An extra ball.
You remember your thoughts?
I think Shelley was asking a question.
Oh, yeah, I just thought it'd be good to take a look at
Oh,
this,
sure.
this zoning map here.
We're talking about where the mouse was. Yep, right there.
So if you'll see across the street is, you know, a thinner strip of this commercial. And then Ryan, will you go just a little further north? So then this is the area with Tractor Supply, Quick Quack. Is that right? Or that's one block further north?
No, that's it. It's a furniture store and
The
a
furniture store.
ice or ice.
Okay, I see.
Tractor
And then
Supply is
one
up
block
here.
further north.
Tractor
That's our
Supply is
piece.
here.
Okay. And then you're saying that in Logan, it's even smaller than that? So
I was just saying-
further north?
And the parcels aren't necessarily split up that way, but when you look at the buildings, like the restaurants and the buildings that are on the highway on Main Street there, their depth is smaller than even the stuff you see out in front of Macy's and
Like the new Super Chicks
Mhm.
in front of Adams.
Yeah, so that stuff requires a smaller footprint than even what you see here, so. I was just saying that there's, with that 250 feet or so, there's plenty of space to have those type of use cases.
Okay.
One item to look at though, Shelley, is access. Oftentimes you'll have certain accesses off the highway. And then you have an interior access. And so when you look at like, Discount Tire, you'll see there's a little spot there for a road or along between the businesses there in front of Macy's, there's an access oftentimes behind them. So that because they won't all have, if you line up that highway, you won't be able to have, like Logan, you won't be able to have entrances off because of a limited access. So some of that access would need to be
It might require more space. Is that-
more space on the east side of that lot. So if you did cut it out and you rezoned there, you do have, and a city road is, to give perspective, a city road is usually a 66-foot right of way. I think some through commercial areas are smaller than that. But at that point, if it's one box store it can feed, then you could have an access off, but UDOT is very, reluctant to give very many accesses off of the highway. I think with judges, they don't even have one, for judges, they have one to the south of there, right? UDOT wouldn't give another.
There's one designed to the south, it's approved by UDOT
Right.
and just getting bids
But
right
not
now.
on that, not on judge's lot itself.
No, it's not, it's more right in the middle of the
And
property.
it will service more than Judge's parcel, that
that access was, we had to go through UDOT with that for both sides of the road, and both sides of the road have to match up. And so that's when Rick was talking about 500 south. In order to have it curve, in order for it to go west and still be on the north side of the pond, on the west side of the highway, it had to move a little bit north. And we could only move it so far north because we had a little bit north because we had to keep enough distance from 300 south to meet UDOT's requirements to where we could place 500 south. So those accesses right now are pretty much set where they're gonna be.
So there'll be an access at, there's, off of the highway, there's 300 south. There's one basically at 400 and then at 500. And so those roads accessing in would be where it comes. So if you think, you say, oh, if you were to envision the development and say, hey, you know, if it's developed commercially, you can get there off of 5th South to something, you can get there off of 3rd South or off of where it came 4th. But if you have anything in between, then you just, then that would come in the design of when it comes. But just up here, you can see that behind Tractor Supply, there is a small road, and it would have been envisioned, correct me, but envisioned that it would eventually, once development happened, that it would come down and tie 1st South to 3rd South, rather than having any more come off the highway.
I think you meant Discount Tire. You said Tractor Supply.
I did mean Discount Tire, so thank you for that correction, yep. And some of these other ones are private roads, they could do a private drive-through development, that's what Macy's has. So anyway, just as access, just to keep in mind how you access those, and if the lot is 200, did you say? 200 for
About
commercial lot?
250 feet. Oh, but yeah,
If you have,
that's how much space we have, but yeah,
if you
200
need
feet.
200 and then you have a road of 50, then that fits your 250 you may need. I don't know what the design is on the back side, if there's a road in between the 55 plus and the commercial, or if it's just a fence, or even that if you find that far, I don't know.
No,
You need-
it hasn't been conceptualized, yeah.
So anyway, that's one thing you may, just as a consideration.
While we're talking, excuse me, while we're talking about roads,
Rick, would you like to sit down?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Thanks.
while we're talking about roads, the fire department needs an additional road in this development, is that correct?
If we were to expand, they need another access, so we would need to, that would be continuing 500 south to the highway. So,
Well, that's all it needs to be is,
that would just be, right now our drawing shows it dead ending at the rezone
Right,
part.
right.
We would just have to extend it that couple hundred feet to the highway, and that would meet what the fire department was concerned about.
okay,
Okay,
yeah, that's good.
Joe? No comments. Okay. Mr. Hankey? Any? No. Shelley, anymore? Okay. I hate to, as a commission member, I hate to see us lose commercial property. And that's what I see this as, a piece of commercial property getting converted over to residential. So that's probably the way I'll vote. I haven't heard anything different tonight. We ready for a motion? Do I need a correction here? You want to correct me on how I'm doing tonight?
You're doing great.
Okay, anybody want to propose a motion?
Have we had all the discussion we need to have?
I believe so. The commission doesn't have any more questions. We've had a great explanation by Scarlett. We've got some in-depth on the roads with Ryan on your questions. And,
I'd love to hear if you have more thoughts.
Well, I am finished asking the questions of these guys. I just,
Okay.
I wonder if we needed to discuss anything additional. I'm also concerned about, taking away commercial opportunities. And maybe right on the highway, they're not gonna take up the whole space east of that for one commercial business, but that whole area could have additional commercial businesses, which, I think, the general plan assigned that as commercial for a reason. So it's kind of my thought. But on the other hand, I did talk to some residents, who were moving into that area, and they were quite pleased with, having some more neighbors, so.
They convince you to move down the hill?
No.
I hear it's a good development. Okay, if there's nothing else that you'd like to discuss, commission members, I'm open to
I'm interested, this may be out of line if it is, but Kent, you're a resident of Providence, and you haven't spoken. I'd be interested in your viewpoint on
If it's allowed, I'll speak. I told Scarlett I wasn't gonna speak anymore today, but. Can I say, I do have one thing.
You have to walk.
Please.
Go up.
it. I'm interested in any resident, but I know you personally, so I thought I'd.
Kent, right here.
This is a good time if anyone else in the audience wants to make a comment. We're opening it back up.
Kent Dunkley, I'm a resident of Providence. I've watched the Champlin, developments for 25 years, and I've never spoken to anyone that has moved into one that regrets it. They're the best at what they do, and I've told other contractors, I've said, why don't you guys do what Craig years ago, what Craig was doing, and now what Rick is doing, because it just works. Time and time again, it works. But what I wanted to say, and I really appreciate the opportunity, Joe, I thank you for letting me come up, but I think one thing on the commercial that we need to remember is, especially with the intersection of 500 South aligning with the intersection across the road with Blackstone, is by moving that intersection to the north, there are now 2 commercial corners on 500 South instead of just one. Businesses want to be on a corner. They don't want to be, like, there's one commercial property immediately south of Discount Tire that has been for sale for years and years and years. It doesn't have an access off from the highway. You have to go behind Discount Tire and over. That really doesn't work. And so the way that Rick's designed it now is you would have 2 commercial corners on 400 South, 2 commercial corners on 500 South. That's where the tax base is gonna come. The people that want to develop and move to Providence want to be on a corner. And all I have to do is look, that's where they are. So that's what I wanted to say, and I appreciate the opportunity to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. You change your mind? Or did you wanna try to sway us?
No,
One way or another? Okay.
I haven't told you how I'm thinking. so
I didn't, I'm not asking. Just wanna know if you wanna sway us one way or another.
No,
Okay.
I wanted to, I know Kent sells real estate and is into the commercial. I'm interested in any other citizens' comments.
I've got another question.
There's a-
Oh,
Hang
sorry.
on.
No,
Hang on, we'll get you. Bob, go ahead, and then, yeah.
I asked about the fire, department letter. And, it looks to me like the existing subdivision there, is over the number of, units that would require a second exit. Is that right? So Fifth South is gonna take care of both of those, even though we go to 61 units, lots?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, the existing needs to have that. Second,
Well, you know, there was a balance made based on how many units we had versus the fact that 500 South was planned to continue to connect. So there was a planned access that was gonna be there,
okay,
so, yeah.
so that does cover that.
Yep.
Okay, all right, good, thanks. I just wanted to make sure.
Would you like to help?
Yeah.
And give us your John Henry? It's Jane, isn't it? Jane, exactly.
Yeah, my name is Jane Nicholson, and I am a resident of the new development, the new Ballard, an enthusiastic resident, I should say. And this is more a question than a comment, but how realistic is it to have these commercial properties that go deeper than the main street access or the highway access? Is it realistic to think that, are there examples in Logan where we have within a block, we have, you know, the main road residents, and then we have another layer of businesses behind that, and perhaps even another one, a third one. I think the comment that Kent made about the corner lots being so valuable, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm just not sure if you're gonna get those commercial residents, in that property, just.
That's okay, just, here's the concern. And it's kind of a facetious one, but we just wanna make sure there's plenty of room for credit unions and car washes in our town. Okay.
Yeah, please, we
We're
need
really
another
concerned
one.
about that because we don't have enough.
We don't.
It doesn't
Or what
matter to
about the
us. It
storage
doesn't,
units?
it
We could
doesn't
use
matter to
storage.
us, commercial, who wants to do what with the commercial property as long as it's within code. So,
Yeah, I just had that
Okay.
question. Is there a place where I'm not thinking?
there's a master plan in place.
of-
And in the master plan, this area was designated as commercial highway district. And so what we're talking about is changing the commercial to a residential.
I realize that,
That's our concern here
Right.
tonight.
but you're talking about having businesses further to the east from,
Yep.
on that property.
Yep.
Like several roads where the
I don't know
businesses.
about several, but yeah, I'm thinking, you know, the Macy's. Macy's has got similar, is it the same ratios? I don't know, but, you've got Morbetta is on the highway, but there's a road behind it.
Mhm.
Let's see, there's the IHC, they don't have a road through, but the access there is not the best, but it is commercial. And it's what we want, that's a nice building there, and it shows well in our community of Providence. We have a medical facility, a good, strong, clean medical facility. They're great tenants or landowners.
May I clarify something for you?
Uh-huh.
IHC would not be able to be built in a commercial highway zone.
They don't generate sales tax.
They're a non-conforming use because they were built, that area along the street, along the highway, at one time was commercial general. Then when we realized that we were getting a lot of doctor's offices, credit unions, things like that were filling up that space that retail people wanted to come to, but weren't ready, this end of the valley wasn't really ready to support all that extra retail. That's when the city changed to commercial highway. So commercial highway, you're looking at Tractor Supply, you're looking at Macy's, you're looking at restaurants, you're not looking at doctor's offices, you're not looking at credit unions. Those things wouldn't come in there unless it was an incidental use. And unless there was like Macy's, they've got enough commercial, square footage that they can support those, credit unions and the credit unions that are there.
Restaurants.
but, well, the restaurants count.
Oh, so you're talking about the 88% issue?
Yeah. And so,
I think-
but IHC, in today's world, IHC would not be able to be built on this.
Oh, so if IC wanted to build that building today, they would have to go to a lot that was appropriate, and it might be something that's 250 feet deep.
Yeah,
And still, that way they have highway access, but it wouldn't be on the highway.
well, it would have to be in a red zone. On the map, the stuff that's red, that's the commercial general, where
Okay,
IHC could go. The peach color or whatever, I don't know what other people's eyes would see that as, I see it as peach. That color is the sales tax revenue, that's the commercial highway. So that's the one that has to have 88% sales tax producing businesses. But IHC is in that zone, but it's a non-conforming use in that zone because it came before we had that zone in place.
sure, okay, thank you.
Well, thanks for letting me speak. I just wanted,
Yeah, thank you, Jamie.
Ryan, can you enlighten us on your measurements there?
Well, I just doing a few measurements, if I come here and come across, the measurement's about 500 feet or so. So I was just looking at some of these businesses that you talked, how deep they were. For Tractor Supply, it's 650.
But it's not on the highway at all.
It's not on the
That
highway.
piece is, was it 650 from the back of Tractor Supply
But-
out to the highway?
No, no, I didn't put it to the highway. Just out so that you can see their parking lot, so that you can see a building and the parking lot. I was just trying to measure some of these out. Macy's, if I measure Macy's, you know, they have a road there, but they're 630, so Macy's wouldn't fit on the current one. Some of these ones that are on this side there. So,
The Express?
Pan Express is about 235. So if you were to look at an intersecting street, could you fit, you know, if you split them, could you fit ones on both sides? At this point, the proposal is just on the highway, because the other would become the residential. So I was just measuring, I think this is the furniture store.
Or no, not it, Palmer.
They're about 360 feet. So anyway,
That's helpful, thank you.
I was measuring some that we already have and how much that is. Obviously, it's a Google Earth measurement, so
Okay, gotta be accurate.
caveat that as it is, as inaccurate as that is, so, but.
You would entertain a motion? Or should we table it?
Before there's a motion, I appreciate Jane and Ken's comments. I don't know if there's any way to predict how much we would lose financially by doing this. Can't mention the corners are most valuable, and that sure appears to be that way. However, there are some businesses that aren't on corners, but but by not having that second layer of businesses off the highway, would we really get those businesses? I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Obviously, there's people who would like to continue the Ballard Springs subdivision further, and it is nice, and everybody I know that, I don't live too far from it, they like it. They're very happy to be there. So how much damage financially would it do to the city, I guess is my question. And is there any way to realistically guesstimate that?
Got a hypothetical question you want an answer for that? I just,
We'd like it on the
I
record.
just- I'm
We'd like it on the
wondering
record
if-
with your firstborn attached to it with a staple.
I'm just wondering if having the one, if we recommend rezoning that, you're still gonna have businesses along the highway. How many more businesses would we have had if we didn't rezone? You know, is there any way to kind of guesstimate that? And that's kind of what Jane was mentioning too. And there are some examples of it. By Macy's, there are a few businesses next to Macy's and it's, you know, they're off the road.
They're not behind Macy's though, are they?
No,
No, but they're behind other businesses. I mean, there are other businesses on the highway.
behind Macy's though, next meter just built behind Macy's. And there is, so there's next meter on the highway,
Yeah,
then there is Macy's, then there is parking in between, and then there's frontage. So Macy's is the example,
and Tractor Supply is another one.
Tractor Supply is another.
And then, is it Visionary that's back there on the roundabout, or
Uh,
south roundabout?
No,
no, there's an engineering
But
one
those-
and,
uh,
Again,
civil,
those wouldn't be allowed in
Not-
this.
well,
right,
those are commercial.
right.
yeah,
Right,
they're
they're
not,
commercial.
they're not,
I think the
Sales tax.
question is commercial versus residential.
No,
well, it's not commercial, it's highway commercial, which requires
What-
the,
what-
sales tax generating kind of business.
Right,
In other words, your civil engineering firm isn't a sales tax generating business.
Right. That's why it's under commercial general here, that's why it's zoned differently.
So are you gonna answer my hypothetical question?
I'm happy to answer hypothetical. I got a caveat. I just came back from St. George today from a finance officers conference, so I'm all financed up, so you may not want to hear about me. So, but there are some basic differences in tax difference between a corporate or the professional office and a residential. So on property tax, residential gets a 45 percent exemption on their property tax. So dollar for dollar, construction wise, between commercial general and residential, you have a 45% additional tax on commercial general as you do on residential. So basically, residential is your lowest of your tax, agricultural being the lowest of the property tax. Then residential is your next, property tax base. And your highest is probably your sales tax and commercial highway general. The commercial highway would be your highest of taxing, property. Because in a residential, you get half of our sales tax. We talk about property tax and there's a difference in property tax. Then in sales tax, we get a percentage of volume. Half of our sales tax comes from point of sale and half comes from population. So if you increase the point of sale, you increase your share of that property tax. So that's why, so in your commercial highway, the sales tax, which comes in, you get the higher property tax rate. And generally, from a city perspective, we provide somewhat less individual services. The businesses aren't the same demand as a residential. From a purely financial standpoint, your highest revenue is multifamily housing. High density multifamily housing is your highest revenue. Then your commercial highway, and then your high density residential housing, and then the lower the density of the housing, the less it is. But
and acre for acre is, property values on residential are not,
commercial are almost always built to a higher standard,
and
so they have a higher cost, so.
And the leases or the value of the property, the appraised property value is significantly higher typically.
Right, because costs are higher for commercial property, they build to a higher standard of construction, so they're higher, so they would appraise it at higher values.
But you could say most likely businesses are gonna want their business along the highway, not a block off. Would you say that or not? I'm only thinking about the two lots by Macy's or whatever there is on First North that have been sitting there since Macy's was built. And they're still sitting there and you complain about their signs.
Yeah.
But, nobody's putting anything there because it's not on the highway.
But.
So that's my biggest question, I
But
guess.
Next came in and,
But is next doesn't, that's not what we're talking about here. Next couldn't build
it's
down.
commercial. I'm just saying it's commercial.
It's commercial, but not
It's not
sales tax.
sales.
But it's not, it doesn't meet the,
It doesn't meet the
Standard
commercial
for the-
highway
that's
standards.
right.
We have seen another business come through the planning commission recently. I don't know if it's official yet or not, fast food restaurant. Is it official?
Yeah, I think so.
The
They've got a plan.
Chick-fil-A is going to be not on the highway. It's going to be south or north of Tractor Supply.
And so it would be off, it wouldn't be the highway road, but it's the next tier
So
back.
just behind Movetta. So I mean, I think that was a desirable location for them. That's one area.
Anyways, does that answer your question? I can go in really good depth,
No, that,
but I thought.
you did
that was-
very
I
well.
tried to-
You
tried to
paid
keep it what
attention in
you
St.
wanted.
George. That was good. I'm not sure I have a, anyway, I appreciate that.
I'd like to make a motion.
I would appreciate that motion.
Before I make a motion, I just want to give my thoughts on this. Generally, I'm really strong in property rights and letting the owner do with the property that they own. But, I also take into consideration that there are a lot of other citizens that develop the general plan. That process is not a closed process, it's a very open process. And one which the citizens of Logan were allowed to participate in. That bearing in mind that, I don't know this to be a fact, but I suspect it's the case that the Champlins purchased this property with the existing zoning and they knew what they purchased at the time. And, I think in terms of the limited amount of property that we have for this type of business, we're bounded on the north by River Heights and Logan and Millville on the south and Logan on the west lot. And there's just not a whole lot of other property, so bearing in mind that our recommendation is just that, a recommendation and not the final decision that the city council will have to make, I would make a motion that we recommend to the city council that they not grant the rezone, not approve the rezone.
Okay, we've got a second.
Second,
Okay, so we can send this before we do a vote. We can send this to the city council with a suggestion that they don't do it. Or we could table it. We could do a lot of things with it, but that's what we're moving to now is to send it as a non-recommendation to the city council. That's what we're voting on,
No, a negative recommendation.
a negative recommendation, right? But not to do it. All those in favor of the motion that Joe Chambers has made and Bob Washburn is second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Did we get Michael Fortune on? He was out running through the sagebrush in Nevada trying to find a Wi-Fi connection.
like you said, trying to find a wife.
Trying to find a Wi-Fi.
I did not see him on.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we've got one more item. Tonight we've got a study item regarding parking regulations. We see a lot of people here and some of them are gonna leave. And you're welcome to stay, go. Thank you for coming and your opinions and your thoughts. Okay, we're gonna turn to the study items, which item number 3 tonight, and it's the ordinance code, what do you call it, PCC? What's it called?
Providence City Code.
Providence City Code, amendments, parking regulations. Planning Commission will review and discuss proposed amendments to the city code 1086, which governs parking regulations. Take it away, Scarlett. Would you like to sit down?
I'm gonna come and sit over
Okay,
this one.
Painful for us to watch you sometimes.
Because I can write better on this table than I can on my lap. So as we went through on some other recent code changes, we talked about parking during all of those changes, and so this proposed amendment to our existing code just kind of clarifies. And one of the things that we've done is we have parking requirements in several different places depending on the type of development. So this clarifies where someone can look to find all that the different parking. It also talks about the amount of we are recommending that we change the office general from one space for each 2 employees working the shift with the greatest number of employees. That's a moving target. And so it's much better to have something that's not moving all the time. 1 space per 200 square feet in use, which is quite common throughout
Space what?
for 200 square feet in use. So, if you had a 1,000 square foot building, you would need, 5 spaces, so. Then offices not providing on-site customer service, 1 space for each 300 square feet. So if you have an office that they just truly are an office and have very few people come to their establishment, then 1 space for each 300 square feet. That's kind of, I looked at Logan's and several other communities around, and that's pretty standard to what they have. And then on the line 52, it talks about how to compute the parking requirements. And so we put a little bit more clarification to that. Even though they seem like common sense things, when a developer comes in or someone comes in and they are tight on space, sometimes common sense doesn't prevail. And so, to clarify it so that we can say, no, you do need to include the outdoor seating area as part of your need for parking. That will just help. In our code currently, we have that people can park in an area properly located for a future garage. Well, we have a lot of people that have put parking pads along their side of their house, and they can put a parking pad there and still meet the zoning setbacks. But if they were to try and put a garage over the top of that parking pad that's connected to their house, that garage probably wouldn't meet the side yard setback. And we want people to be able to design parking pads for their RVs and stuff, so they're not out in the street causing grief. So, to change it from, or an area located for a future garage, we could say, or an area properly designed as a parking pad. Because, like I say, we have a lot of, we would have to issue a lot of non-compliant notices if we started going to people about their wider parking area next to their house. And some of them don't do it for a trailer or anything like that. They just want a big wide driveway where their kids can play basketball and guests can come and park. And we actually want to encourage that, not discourage. We'd like to get more people off the street parking on property rather than out on the street. So that's the reason for that suggestion. And then, again, on the location, it just clarifies that because mixed use developments have a little bit of different, mixed use does kind of encourage some parking, shared use parking and things like that. So we want them to look at, and so does multifamily, so we want them to look at a couple of different sections. And then the last thing that I put in, parking areas are not allowed in the clear view areas because, you know, if you've got a parking area and somebody parks their, panel van there and it happens to be in a clear view area, then you're gonna have safety problems. So they can still do them, just not in the clear view areas. So those are the recommendations. So the next step in this would be for you to suggest changes, things like that, and then schedule it for a public hearing.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere.
I will. A lot of this stuff is the notes I had from when we went through the accessory building discussions and the clear view discussions. So that's where most of it came from, was just to clarify it and clean it up.
Okay, so in 10.8.6, parking regulations, line 20 to 28, there's a lot of reference there to other code.
Which I couldn't find.
And that's where I got lost when I was reading it. But
You
there.
can't find
in-
10.8 or,
Well, section 9 of this chapter.
10.8.
It's not printed, and I'm not sure where it is. I wanted to look that up.
Are we talking about ECC 10.8.6.9? Is that
no, 10.8.9.
10.8.9? Okay,
10.8.
we're in 10.8.6.
So if you go to the city
Okay.
code and you go to Title 10, Chapter 8, and then you go down to Section 9, that's the design.
It's a design issue because it's single family, duplex, multifamily, mixed use multifamily. Yeah, the dwelling unit, let's see, 10.8.6.A1,
7, is that where we're at?
we're in 10.8.6.
So Brian, if you click on 10.8, not chapter 9, chapter 8, 10.8, right there, click on that. And see down at the bottom, there's Section 9, design standards.
We're attached to multifamily.
That's
So-
where it is.
So under 10.8.9, and then number 7 is parking plan, is there a parking plan for each of these areas?
No, they're all, design standards for non-single family homes. It's we're talking about one code here for all of the multifamily buildings. I'm sorry, lots in the city. Right?
Maybe just as a suggestion, to make that a little easier to follow, instead of section 9 of this chapter, we could just say section 10-8-9.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. That'd make it easier to find. I just had a hard time
And then
looking that up,
10.8.4.
and even now I'm in it, and I'm not even sure I'm seeing what I am supposed to be seeing.
I think that sounds reasonable. See 10.8.9 and 10.4.
So each one of these, like D, single family attached, C, section 9, design standards, this chapter. So that doesn't tell me enough information that, I mean, I'm in section 9. I don't know what I'm looking for to find
I see on
10.8.9.
7, it says parking plan.
Is that parking standards under number 7? Is that where I'm gonna find answers to all these D, E, F, G, and H?
D, E, F, G, and A, G, H is different.
Well,
So you
yeah,
have,
yeah, H is different. Yeah, you're right.
this is the parking regulations at 10.8.6.
8, 10,
So 8 is the
10, 8.
It's the chapter, section, the 6th of the section. So when we talk about section 9, we're 10.8. And the code you're talking about is
Yep.
in 6, and it's referencing 9.
It's
All
referencing
of them.
9,
All of 9.
it's referencing 10-8-9.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yep.
The whole thing. So we gotta read the whole thing to find out what it is you're talking about in this subparagraph. Is
Well,
it-
you can read, once you
I-
get into 10.8.9, then when you find the parking plan,
Okay, then I'm looking for the parking plan. Okay,
Ryan, you wanna look for the parking plan?
7, number 7, parking plan.
yes.
So should it say 10.8.9.7?
That's the only section of 10-8-9 that has anything to do with what we're talking about on this,
D, E, F, and G.
D, E, F, and G. Is that true?
7B, and then it's different. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are the different specifications for each type of housing. So like, single family detached or 4 per unit.
Where are you at, Shelley?
7B,
7B. Okay, right.
So let's
Okay,
just change the
yeah.
reference to that.
Yes, that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah.
To know where to go.
Okay. Same thing with H. We want a more specific reference. I'd like to see links, but I'm not gonna ask for links.
Yeah, I would, 10-4, establishment of districts. Yeah, it would be helpful to know where to go to find what it is that you're referencing. It really would.
Okay,
I can do that.
Or are we still?
we're still talking about parking.
Okay, so I had another comment on line 65. Would it be appropriate to change handicap spaces to disabled?
I think they're still called handicap spaces.
Did you look into that?
I will.
If we
I
can.
thought it's kind of offensive to those who are disabled to. But anyway,
Actually, you don't say they're disabled, you say they have disabilities.
right, but
But I think it is still handicap.
I
handicap,
think that
I think
I
that's still
think
the term
in the-
used for.
that's the term that still is
for
used.
parking, but I will check it for sure.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Change in, line 72. The changes in line 72, we change the references in there as well, so they're more specific. It's nice to know that code's already done and discussed. Most of it's been discussed in the last few years.
Yeah.
Even Scarlett out there with a measuring tape in the four-door pickup truck. Vision in my mind, that's what the staff does.
That's what we do.
Amongst other things.
Quick look, on the Department of Motor Vehicle website, it does say it's disabled plates and placards. That's what
Plates
they're
and
calling
placards.
it on the motor
To
vehicle.
use the handicap part. It'd be worth investigating. See if it's time to move it over to a different home.
I will do it for sure.
Shelley, did you see anything else in here that you wanted to bring up?
no, I appreciate this. I think it's good work.
This is what we would consider a standard review. Not big, not small, we're doing adjustments to the code. It all makes sense, I haven't seen any big issues. We pay everybody $100 a year to park appropriately in their yards. I don't wanna bring that one up.
I do have a question, please, for information. My office building, which is on Federal Avenue, it's about 6,000 square feet. We have 5 employees, 6 employees. And the parking behind Federal is, off of Federal is very limited. We're fortunate enough to have 6 or 7 spaces. But underneath the current ordinance, I'd have to have 30 spaces.
Yeah,
And how many do you think that you would need with your employees and
Clients.
clients?
I don't have very many clients, Ryan, so I think we're okay.
I'm not trying to touch on,
No,
for that size of space, I'm just trying
No,
to, what would you think?
well, we were fortunate enough to have the old Logan Junior High have an earthquake and then tore it down and turned it into a parking lot there. The community uses it as well as my employees, but I guess my question is have you done a survey of the businesses here in town to see if they're, I mean, we talk about,
Or better?
no, the farm implement place over there,
Yeah.
Tractor Supply.
Yeah.
Every time I've gone there, they've got half a parking lot, even on a Saturday busy, just empty. And I'm just wondering if on the commercial, I mean, I think you're hitting it right on the residential and that, but on the commercial, I don't know that most of the businesses want to design to have adequate parking, particularly if they're in retail, because that's where their bread and butter is, but I'm just,
And I'm guessing the Tractor Supply is going through growth, not necessarily negative, but positive growth. And so they will need that over time. I've done a little traveling over the last few years, and I go to Home Depot a lot across this nation. And there are some Home Depots out there that are 10 times busier than ours, and the parking lots are full, which is a little scary because those are pretty big parking lots.
Yeah.
So what would it take for us to induce you to come move your business offices here?
nothing.
Okay.
Nothing, I don't want to work in the community I live. Even cats are smart enough to go outside their yard.
We'd like to paint a target on your wall.
Absolutely nothing, bro.
one of the things though that we have to look at when somebody comes is if it's office space, it might be attorneys. Or it could be another type of office space that would generate more commuter traffic in and out. And so we kind of try to look at a happy medium. Because that's why we started out with the number of employees. But then we found out that if the first office came in and they only had 1 or 2 employees in their office, and that's what they thought they were gonna do, but then they grew. And so in their square footage, in their offices became cubicles. So now you have 4 or 5 employees, but you only had parking places for 1 or 2 employees. So that's kind of where we struggled with doing it off of employee rather than some type of square footage. And if it seemed, and like I said, I just went around to some of the other communities and looked at their parking. And I didn't do any particular kind of math other than look what they did and copied them, so.
There's by the specialty hospital, my mom lives in a 55 and older place over there in North Logan, and there's a newer 3-story building that has about half the amount of parking they need. And this roads are just jam-packed with cars parked because there's no way they can park in the lot. And I was just thinking, I've I don't recall hearing anybody complain about too much parking, but there's always complaints about not enough parking. So I think if we're gonna err, let's err on that side.
We do have a few people out there that feel like we put too much under asphalt and don't leave enough, under green. But
So that
But then
would green asphalt.
we could do that.
Only by land.
But now that they don't want us to plant lawn, maybe that argument goes away. Paint pictures on the asphalt.
Let's do it. Let's put it in code.
A lot of times you have businesses that have to put up signs that, you know, you can only park here if you're going to this business. And, that's because there's just not enough parking for the kinds of clientele that they draw.
Actually, there's business here that I went to today, and I had not noticed that before in that parking lot, but half of the stalls were labeled with a label on it. And, so Rob and I, and actually Kent was in the same little meeting with us, we talked about that, about, do you think that means that those go to that business and the ones without a label go to this business? And the ones without a label were all full, and we were going to the business that had the without label ones. And so, if that's the case, then that business didn't have enough. And the other one was empty. There were hardly no people in the labeled spaces. So, you know, it's just, that's where the trick is to try and figure out how to do it so that we don't make more impervious surface than we need to, but we make enough that people can reasonably support those businesses.
Another comment off the subject of the businesses, but I've noticed a newer development of townhouses, and it says 2 parking stalls plus 0.25. And I noticed a number of people have to park behind their 2-car garage because there's really not enough parking there. And it's not gonna get better because they're building more.
The
Talking venue?
No, I'm talking
Fox
Kent
Hollow.
Dunkley's,
Fox
place.
Hollow.
Yeah, and I've seen that in other places too.
Right.
But there's just not enough parking for, either because half their garage is full or they have somebody, I mean, I know there's something for guest parking, but I worry about that a little bit. I don't think it looks too good when these cars have to park sideways in front of their garage because they just don't have enough parking. But I don't know, maybe it's, that's probably standard, I don't know.
One of the problems that we face, particularly with multifamily, state code is actually starting to look into that quite a bit. If the state code goes with the trend that they're talking, they will reduce the number of spaces because multifamily, in theory, in somebody's
Mass
theories, is mass transit and walkable community. Well, even if our multifamily is right next to a bus stop or very close to a bus stop, what you would consider bus stoppable, those people have more than 2 cars. I mean, I've had people from the Gateway Townhomes and condominiums call and frustrated as all get out when we really cracked down on them parking on the street. And they said, well, where am I gonna park my truck? And I said, in your garage or in your extra space that you've got, because you got 2 spaces. Well, yeah, but we've got my car, my wife's car, and my truck. And I say, and
Yeah.
you'd be surprised how many multifamily people have more than 1 vehicle.
Per person.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that is even in the multifamily, you can have up to 4 unrelated people in a unit. So then you've got 4 unrelated people, and not all 4 of them are gonna ride bicycles and take the bus.
Yeah.
And so, but I agree with you. I think that in our area, multifamily actually needs more parking.
Yeah.
Because they do have family come to visit, but I don't,
But
I think
you're not
that's-
trying to cover the person buys a house, with 2-car garage, and then they bring 3 cars with them. I mean, that really is, they made a mistake. And should, don't know why we laughing, they made a mistake. I mean, granted,
I'm
the
not,
real estate agent may not have told them about those CCNRs or whatever code it is that they have to live by, or city code. But yeah, so they made a mistake. So what do? Well, they could sell a car or they could move.
Or they park their car.
Crossways,
Sideways. yeah,
right.
Parallel, whatever it's called.
yeah. Anyway, that's kind of, I would be reluctant to ask for much more parking than that, because I actually think that in a year or two, the state's probably gonna tell us we have to reduce it, so.
Okay. And we're covering, no changes to the commercial parking. I don't see any changes here. You're not concerned about the commercial parking, the retail.
No.
That's working for us right now. You don't have a lot of issues. Come up with that. Okay. Are we ready to make a motion on amendments to the parking, 10A6?
Next step is,
Public hearing.
a public hearing, right?
Right. That would be the motion.
I
Take this
have to make a motion, because I've made every motion so far. So,
I'll make one. What are we talking about?
I'll make a motion that we move this
Talking
agenda
about
item to a public
refreshments
hearing.
before the meeting starts. Go ahead, Shelley.
I make a motion that we move this agenda item to a public hearing.
Okay,
Second.
and we've got a first, we've got a motion by Shelley Mazer to move this to a public hearing. And we've got a second by Mr. Washburn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. Now, we're not gonna close yet. As long as we have the Brainiac or supercharged or whatever we wanna call Ryan today on the financial side of things. And we wanna bring up zoning. I would like to have a quick discussion about the revenues. Because part of our charter is be concerned about revenues for the city. I would like to know, commercial highway district says it's 88% is gonna be revenue producing. So,
Sales tax revenue.
sales tax revenue.
I have a point of personal privilege.
You wanna leave?
No, no, I just watched an open public meeting video on the Lieutenant Governor's website. Give me credit for that, please, 1 hour. Is that permissible to discuss this if it's not on the agenda? And I'm asking,
As soon as we're done with my financial question, Jim, we can bring it up.
You can bring up an item,
A
but
subject.
no decisions can be made.
Right.
Okay,
Bring
The
up the
better
subject.
thing would be to bring it up and say,
Tyler, can we put it on
ask
the
the
next
staff,
agenda?
yes,
Okay.
that's the better thing.
Staff to.
I just want to make sure we were following it. My law firm is suing North Logan over this issue.
And by all means, let's not, let's err on the side of caution and say, I vote that we not cover things. If you want to talk to me after, I'll stay.
Well, I wanted to have an open discussion and I can't have an open discussion. Okay,
No problem.
so how do we have, I mean,
Get
just
it
an
on
open
the
discussion,
agenda.
a study item? I don't want to take it on to public hearing.
No,
As long as we don't act on it, we're
Right.
okay.
I'm not asking to act on it either. So my concern is that we see revenues come in, sales tax dollars come in from commercial highway district and from some of the commercial districts. Is that correct? You were talking about,
you see sales tax dollars come in from residential districts.
okay,
But,
Okay.
but Brian, and you can have this discussion, but the public may be very interested in this topic as to what zones, how do sales tax impact our different zones? So I'm not sure that it's not something that you would want to put on as a study item, and probably they'll all get up and walk out just like they did now, but at least we could say, no, we had it on the agenda, we talked about it, you could have come and listened.
okay. I'm flabbergasted that they haven't found a way to charge the banks. The banks have found a way to charge us. Why can't we charge the banks?
So I think the balance you play is we want you to be able to utilize from a resident peer perspective, the decisions you make. I don't know that we want to charge you with trying to maximize profits for the city. I don't know that that's, I don't know that that's what the charter
But
there
it
is.
should be a concern.
But you should at least have enough education, to understand what the impacts of making a decision are. But I think a lot of times we get to the point that the public thinks that all you're doing is trying to get to the bottom line. When in reality, you're trying to follow the general plans that's been adopted, you're represent different areas of the community. I would clarify, banks pay property taxes, credit unions do not.
Okay, but we're talking that's property taxes, no sales tax. So how about car washes?
Car wash should pay sales tax.
Sales tax, okay, great. So do we wanna make space for another bank? Or do we wanna just zero that zoning out?
I would then, and I know this is probably another conversation, but I would then caution you from discouraging any business. I cringe at any time you disparage another car wash. Because at this point, at this point, Providence has 2 car washes. We have our second car wash. There is no prevalence of car washes
There's one across the street from
In
the
Logan.
Citibank.
in Logan.
That's Providence.
No, it's
I
Logan.
know, but it's what I use as a resident. And so I see a lot of car washes. So I
Right,
make-
that's why we
You're
want
supporting
that business
Providence.
inside of Providence, so that you would use a Providence business.
Right.
Okay, this is where I live, and I don't know where the boundaries are, okay? I sort of know where the boundaries
You're the planning
Trust
commission,
planning
you know it's
commission.
about.
are. No.
You're saying too much. You might want.
Okay, so why don't I just,
Would you like to add it as a
Do
discussion
offline.
item?
let me take that foot out and put the other one in, okay? I had no idea that the commercial, a lot of the commercial properties were just paying property taxes. For some reason, I thought they were paying for other. I thought that maybe the commercial properties like JB Accounting and Tax, that property was worth significantly more in the commercial than if we had the same thing, if it was a house. So,
By 45%.
no, more than 45. I'm talking about more than 45. I'm talking about the lease on that building. If somebody's to lease that building, it's gonna be like 7,000 a month, right?
Well, the underlying zoning is commercial, is gonna increase the appraised value as well.
That's why I'm bringing this up, so that there is a reason to be concerned about what goes where, like we're doing, you know. When I moved to this valley 25 years ago, I was the king of whatever you call it, Ernst. I was up at Ernst. Ernst had that building and they rented it from the mall and it was $15,000 a month. And it was like $85,000 a month under market. And they were trying to get, they were trying to get Ernst out of there and everything else. The point is that it seemed like the commercial property pays a lot more per square foot for, in taxes, for the property taxes anyway, than a residential does. And so we balance it through the zoning and make sure that the people in our city, get all the advantages that they can. And I just was surprised tonight that I didn't realize the banks don't pay it.
Banks pay property tax.
No, I'm not talking about property, I'm talking about sales tax. Because Zions is down there on the corner
Yes, they pay property tax.
and they don't pay any sales tax.
Selling.
Well, they do. I used to bank there and they'd sell a lot of stuff.
Well, then they pay sales tax whenever they're selling.
No, they don't. That's the thing. I mean, if
They're selling
if I bounce a check, it's $35. Does the city get any? Sure, it's a sale. It's out of my pocket into their pocket. That's a sale. And so that's their business model is. The fines is a significant part. It's like 40%.
I think there's a lot of good training on tax and revenue. And a property tax training and how that works, would be highly valuable to you. We probably ought to find one that we can share and have you go to a property tax. I'm sure the league has some. If not, we can find some that could be helpful there.
Okay, anybody else want to bring anything up? Like, get shot down?
Just
I'd like to make a motion that we.
Go ahead.
Meeting.
Faster.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a first and a second. Bob Washburn made a motion that we adjourn. Shelley Nazer seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.